Chào mừng quý vị và các bạn quay trở lại với chương trình Tôi Và Việt Nam trên kênh FBNC với cuộc trò chuyện cùng ông Harlow Russell là CEO của website MuaBanNhaDat.com.vn, một website cung cấp thông tin toàn diện về lĩnh vực bất động sản tại Việt Nam thuộc tập đoàn Việt Nam, một tập đoàn về truyền thông và xuất bản. Welcome back.
Thanks, Con.
So for the first-time buyers, I believe when they look for information online about their next properties or the first house ever, the dream house, I guess they're very cautious about information and the risk. So how do you help the customers minimize the risk?
It's a very good point. It can be very scary to buy a property. It's a big decision. Usually in your life, you have three major decisions: who you're going to marry, are you going to have kids, and buying your first house.
Pretty big decisions.
It's very big. The challenge is getting the right information so you understand how you can do it. How can I buy my first property? How can I buy my first house? And in Vietnam, I have to say, it's rather complicated. The rules, the laws, the ownership, it's a complicated situation. So our job right now with MuaBanNhaDat is the best we can do to help is to supply information in an easy to understand, easy to get way. So step by step, we have guides on our website, you know, what to look for when buying a house, what to look for when looking for a property agent, how to get a mortgage, which is also, frankly, can be quite complicated here. So my mission is to create content, create education about the process, which hopefully will be more useful and easier to find than just going by word of mouth, hey, how do I buy a house?
So what is your view right now about the current situation of the real estate market in Vietnam?
Well, the real estate market has taken some hits in Vietnam over the last couple of years, but basically the market is coming back. The developers in general are relatively optimistic, particularly in Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi. So the market is coming back. You see developers are now launching more projects, and the focus of those launches across Vietnam is very much to you. You are the profile. Young, single professional, or newly married. This is where the chunk of the market, the real estate market, is now going and being offered. So that's very interesting, and what I say to my young Vietnamese friends is you have a lot of power right now because all the developers, they want you. They want you. But many young Vietnamese don't realize they have the power to negotiate, and they are a sought-after commodity from the developers, as well as the banks, because the banks, they want you. Everybody's woken up and said, the young Vietnamese buyer is now what we want and need.
But you're targeting the young Vietnamese buyers. But a lot of the time, the people who make decisions and the people who have money are the parents. And the older generations. So you target one group of clients, the young buyers. But the people who make buyer decisions who have money, it's the older generation, which is you have to approach them by traditional media.
Yes, so Vietnam is still in many ways a traditional country. And so even though there's many more young people, and like yourself, young professional, what the parents say and do is very much important in the decision. Older people, like myself, we also view the internet differently. Whereas a young person is on Facebook every 10 minutes, I'm on Facebook maybe 2-3 times a week max. So you're right. We also have to understand how to get information to the older audience in Vietnam, and they may not be online as much. So that's why, in addition to online, Ringgit Vietnam, we also publish magazines. We also do events that are more traditional in terms of getting information out. But at the end of the day, we can help educate you, but it's still your job to convince your parents.
Definitely.
So if we can provide more information to you, maybe that's a more easier conversation with your parents to provide the finances for what you want.
You had a lot of experience doing brokerage in Singapore.
Yes,
real estate brokerage.
I moved here from Singapore,
but
yes.
now you moved here to Vietnam
Yes.
and doing the job for the Vietnam's real estate market.
Yes.
What do you see the biggest difference?
Well, there are many differences. I am a licensed real estate broker in Singapore and have spent many years actually selling property and investment property to Singaporeans and to foreigners. Major difference is Singapore is, of course, a much smaller market and much more transparent. Information about transactions, what somebody paid for a property, how much tax they paid, is all transparent. It's public information. So that makes buying a property or selling a property, frankly, more fair. Everybody kind of knows what's been paid, what this property sold for a year ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So the market becomes very fair in terms of information. In Vietnam, it is a challenge. Information is generally not available. There is no requirement to make transaction data available to the public. So then it's really much more of a game here in terms of this house is 10 billion dong. Is it really worth 10 billion? Who knows? Okay, the seller says it's worth 10 billion.
Can't just go
but
do a double check on that.
Is it worth 5 billion? Is it worth 20 billion? It's very difficult to get that information. Databases of property data are still relatively exclusive here in Vietnam. And so that's a major difference in terms of the market. And that's a challenge as well as an opportunity for companies like ours to perhaps create bigger databases of transaction data so that potential buyers like yourself have more real, accurate information to make a good choice, make a good financial choice.
Then what can we do to make things more transparent for the market here?
Well, that's a big conversation. In Singapore, of course, the government is very much involved in making sure that information is available, transparent, and required in terms of property transactions.
So you have to public information and make it
there's no choice, okay? For any transaction to happen, there are legal requirements that information is available. That might be something, that Vietnam can move towards in terms of the real estate industry. In addition, as a licensed broker in Singapore, it's a very rigorous process. The licensing process is very tough. So many people fail to get the license. And so in Vietnam, it's much easier to get a license to sell real estate. And so it may be something that can be looked at over time to increase the professionalism of the real estate industry in terms of how a real estate broker is supposed to provide information or be responsible to provide accurate information. That's also a major difference between Singapore and Vietnam. And perhaps in the future, improvements can be made here.
Yeah, true. But you help companies listing their information on your website, MuaBanNhaDat.com.vn. So what do you do when you run into the situation where the sellers, they don't have really transparent information about their products, and you try to help them listing on your website? What do you do?
It's a tough one. So, for example, if you want to sell your property, we have a basic list of requirements to list that property online. There needs to be, photos. There needs to be some evidence that actually this property is the property you're talking about. We require a certain amount of information to list. And then we do quality control. Not on every listing. We have hundreds of thousands of listings, but we try to also, in our team, to make sure as best as possible the information is accurate. And I think we do a pretty good job. Could it be better? Of course.
Okay.
We're not responsible for selling the house. So if a seller, wants to create a story, it's difficult for us to know at any specific time. But we do our best, and we try, and we're raising the requirements as well as time goes on to try to make sure that the data is as accurate as possible.
Sure. I'll get back to that in a minute.
Great.
Thank you. Thưa quý vị, vừa rồi là những chia sẻ của ông Harlow Russell, là CEO của trang web MuaBanNhaDat.com.vn, một website cung cấp thông tin toàn diện về lĩnh vực bất động sản tại Việt Nam. thuộc tập đoàn Ringe Việt Nam, thuộc tập đoàn về truyền thông và xuất bản. Quý vị có thể xem lại đoạn phỏng vấn này trên website fbnc.vn hoặc là theo dõi chúng tôi trên trang facebook.com/Tôi Và Việt Nam. Chúng tôi sẽ còn quay trở lại trong phần tiếp theo.